Hi, and welcome to the second unguided project on Radium code. Today we're going to be building color cubes, so please follow along if you're interested in learning how this project is made. With the color cubes, we're going to be making essentially the 6 sides of a solving Rubik's Cube, which is red, blue, green, yellow, orange, and then white. And this project, it's not too technically difficult, but it will put to test your abilities to be able to plan out and design ahead of time before you actually get into it. And this is actually a very important part of web design, is knowing what you want to make and how you're going to do it before you just dive in and get right to it. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this picture right here, and it looks like we have a basic wooden background right here, followed by 6 of these cubes right here. And seeing as this project is following the calculator project, we're going to be using tables to be able to create each of these individual cells within this one cube side. And from what I see, it looks like each of these cubes are contained, so I'm going to be making 6 divs or div elements to be able to contain all of these cubes. So with that in mind, let's dive right into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is have the essential basics of an HTML document set up. I'm going to go ahead and type that out, .type HTML, and let's go ahead and write our HTML. Then within that, we're going to need our body element, and then on top of that, we're going to have our head element. Every document is going to need a head and a body. There we go. Let's put that down there. Whoops. All right. So now that we're within our body, the first thing that I would do when I see something like this is let's go ahead and set the background for this page. I'm going to go into my head, and as usual, we are going to have the style tags, and that's going to be with the opening style tags and the closing style tag. And as with any background that needs to take up the entire page, we're going to be targeting the body element, and then everything that we change for the background is going to affect the entire page within here. So let's go ahead and target body. All right, so with body, I already have this background preloaded in the back. All you have to do is do background image and then URL, and then any link that you put in here, once again, will change the background for your entire page. I have the link right over here. I just took a quick snapshot, so let's put that there. And now our background's in there, though it is quite zoomed to this top over here. We're going to have to put a few declarations to get it to sit properly. So first thing I'm going to do is let's do background size. And background size is just going to change the size of the background to fit within your screen depending on what kind of declarations that you put within it. So let's do background size cover. And this is going to make the image cover the entire screen. And then we're basically just going to put background repeat, sorry if I can spell that, is no repeat. All right. So now we have a board over here. There is a little bit of empty space on the bottom because my screen is quite large, but with yours, as long as it fits within the screen, it should work perfectly fine. So now we have our background set over there. The next step that I'm going to want to do is to go ahead and start dividing up my page into these multiple parts. The first part that I'm going to be working with is dealing with one cube. And in web design, whenever you come to stuff like this, it's always a wise decision to be able to create one of these, make it exactly how you want, and then afterwards duplicate it all these times. So that's the plan that I'm going to be going with this on this project. So let's go ahead and go with a div element, div, followed by a closing div element. And a div ultimately just divides out and makes a container around all of your elements. So if you do want to move all the contents within div around, you can do that. It is a block element, so it is going to create a new line every single time you create a new div element. Okay, so let's go ahead and I will give the class is equal to Rubik's container. And this is the Rubik's container because it's going to contain one of the sides for our cube. And within this, we are going to create our table, and then within the tables, there's going to be buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and create a table right here, table, followed by a closing table element. And with every single table, to create a row, you will be using the TR element, which stands for table row. This is going to separate your table up into multiple rows and will allow you to be able to create a structure of a row by column design. So let's go ahead and do TR right here, followed by another TR there. And we're going to want, let's see, 1, 2, 3 rows for one cube. So I'm going to go ahead and go back over here and duplicate that 3 times. Now we have a total of 3 rows in there. Within our first table row, we're going to want to create a table data element, which you can basically think of as a column. So right now we have 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to want to create the 3 rows, or the 3 columns, excuse me, within that. So right here I'm going to do TD followed by /TD, and we're going to duplicate that 3 times. Now we have our table row, and then our table data, which is going to act as our columns for our table. For here, we can really use anything to create this kind of green look, or I mean, these basically cell style look on here. And I'm going to be using the button element for that. You should have learned that within the last previous lesson that you did that was guided. So within here, we are going to create a button element. You can see the little button right here. It's clickable. And let's go ahead and duplicate that into here. So now we have our 3 buttons. I'm going to move these 3 columns into each of my rows. Move it there. I'm going to move it over here. So if you take a look over there, you can see that the look's kind of coming together. It's a 3 by 3, and this is the basis for our cube so far. And with all this kind of stuff, it is always easier to be able to use copy and paste. So make sure to take the time to design and then copy and paste afterwards. Now that we have all of our buttons laid out, we can go ahead and begin styling it. And if you remember, classes help you affect multiple elements at the same time without having to go to each element and change it one by one. So for now, we are going to add the same class to all 9 of our buttons so that they are all styled at the same time and we don't have to take time to go through each one at a time. I've already duplicated it a total of 9 times, and I want to show you something pretty cool. If you don't know this yet, you can go ahead and click where you want to be, and then if you hold Control, the Control key on the left side or the right side, you can click anywhere that you want and it will recreate your blinking pointer. So I've clicked it on all these locations, and now when you type, it will affect all 9 locations at the same time. So for here, we are going to use a class. I'm going to call this class Cube Tile, just so that it makes it easier to understand that this is a tile, and each of these are one of the tiles within our Rubik's side. And now let's go ahead and go up to our CSS. This is where we can go ahead and style it again. As with any class, you will need to put a little period or a dot before the name of your class. Elements such as body are predefined HTML elements, such as body right here, so you don't need to put a period. But with any class that you create yourself, you need to put a dot or a period before them. So let's type cube tile, opening and closing right there. And first thing we're going to do is let's flesh out the inside of our button a little bit more. Let's make padding to 20 pixels, and instantly you can see that it's adding pixels to all sides of your button. So your button gets pretty much fleshed out, and it's about the size that we want. Let's go ahead and add a border around all of our buttons. It's going to make it a little bit easier to be able to see on the background, and it will space it out a little bit better. So now that we have our padding, let's go ahead and set the border. I'm going to set it to be 1 pixel, solid and gray. If you look over here, you can see that thin little gray outline over there. It's going to basically just help it stand out from the black background when we set that to be. Okay, so border. Next one, let's set the background color to white. By default, the button element is going to have a gray background like this. Just to reset it for now, we're going to set the background color to white. And you'll notice since it is in the class, all of them will change from gray over to white. Next one is, let's go ahead and set a border radius. Border radius. This is just going to smooth out the corners once again and make it look quite a bit better. There we go, all smoothed out little buttons right there. So there we have it. All of our buttons, our individual tiles for our Rubik's Cube are complete. Now what we're going to want to do next is go back to our Rubik's container and change that so that it looks more like the side of an actual Rubik's Cube. Just like the cube tile class, we are going to have to use a dot or a period to be able to target the Rubik's Cube class. So Rubik's container right here. And then within this container, let's set a few things first. If we notice over here, you can see that there is a border that runs around the edge of each of these cubes. So I'm going to be setting a border. So let's set a border to be 1 pixel, solid, and then gray as well. If you take a look here, it is going to run along the entire back right here, which is not really what we want. It's going quite a bit too far. So if you remember, using display inline block will bring it all the way back in. Because a block element takes up the entire width of whatever it's in, it took up the entire width. So making an inline block will bring it back in so that it sits within its own little container over here. Next thing, just like the button, we're going to set a border radius over here to be 5 pixels. And let's go ahead and set the background color to black. So background color is going to be black. And there we go. We have one entire face of a Rubik's Cube. And then just for a little bit added effect, if we look over here, there is a little bit of box shadow that is running on the side of it to give it a kind of 3D effect. So I will go ahead and add that right now. Let's set box shadow to 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, and black. These are all declarations that have to do with the X and Y of where the box shadow sits and how blurred the actual shadow is, along with the color of the shadow. For this one, we're just moving it 10 pixels down, 10 pixels to the right, blurring it by 20 pixels, and then making the color black. So that's our Rubik's Cube container right over there. And let's actually go back up to our body right here, because if you notice, our Rubik's Cube is not centered in the screen. We'll want it to be centered just like this one by the time we basically complete the project. So let's go back to body. Over here, let's set text align to be center. Now our Rubik's Cube is in the center. Let's give it a little bit of margin. Margin top, let's set that to maybe 5%, maybe 10%. Let's do 10%, around right there. Okay, so now everything is essentially set up. This is where copy and paste comes in, and it's very, very handy. We have 1 cube, we're going to make it a total of 6. And since we have this handy little div right here, all we really have to do is copy it and then paste it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And now we have a total of 6 cubes. But if you notice, they are going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this one on the bottom over here. I'm going to go ahead and put a break element right here, that self-closing tag, so that these two go into the next line. So where are we? We have 1 Rubik's container, 2 Rubik's container, 3, and then, sorry, we should probably clean this up a little bit right there. Clean this up. Here. Alright, so 1, 2, 3. At the bottom of this one, I'm going to create a BR element. And that's going to break it so that they sit within the next line. And that's where break really comes in hand, is that it helps split elements into the next line. Alright, and we are actually pretty much almost there. The next thing we're going to have to do is just change the classes within here so that each of them have a different color within it. And actually, before we do that, let's add a little bit of margin in between each of these containers. We'll go here, let's just set margin, let's do 10 pixels. Alright, that should be good enough. 10 pixels, it's going to split it out. I'm going to create a separate class for each of the colors within this cube. I'm going to make one which is color red, blue, green, yellow, orange, and then finally white. So right here, this shouldn't be too complicated. As long as we have a class for each one, we should be able to quickly change the color for all the elements. So let's set this one to, let's create a class called red side. And all this is going to do, whoops, red side, not red, red side. And let's set the background color to red. And rinse and repeat for all the other colors. Dot blue side, background color is going to be blue. Dot green side, color is going to be green. Yellow, oops, that's a size. I have to go back and change that one. Yellow's green side right here. Yellow side, let's set the background color to be yellow. Orange side, dot orange side, set that like that. Background color is going to be orange. And then last, dot white side. And this should encompass all the colors that we need: red, blue, green, yellow, orange. Red, blue, green, yellow, orange, white. Okay, and then this one is background color will be white. And the last step is really not that complicated. All we have to do is apply each class to whichever button that we want, and it should change the class to that. So let's go over here. The first one, we are going to include the classes with the control clicking again to add multiple lines at the same time. I am going to put, red. So let's set this to red side, and instantly it will fill in it with red. And all we have to do now is rinse and repeat with the rest of the elements. Let's go ahead and set it like that. Click right here, and let's set it to blue. Let's set this one to blue right here. Whoops, it's blue side. And then green, yellow, orange, and white. Set to green side. Oops, did I spell something wrong? Oh, yeah, there's a little semicolon right there. So that's green side, and then yellow, orange, and white. Right here, click. Yellow side, click. Orange side, and then last is white side. Just to be consistent, it's already white because I set the button default color, background color, to already be white. But if we're here, we're going to put white side just in case we build other stuff around it that would cause it to, change color overall. But there we go. We have our completed color cube side. It really isn't as complicated as it may initially look once you break it down and get some copy and pasting skills. This is really a great project to practice your development and your design skills. So I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.